Assalamualaikum. I am Ikra from the Department of BS English Language and Literature. Today we're talking about the lost generation writer Ernest Hemingway. Let's start with the introduction. Gertrude Stein, a writer, made up the term to talk about people who grew up during the World War I. The term originated from Stein's statement to Ernest Hemingway about being a lost generation. Stein told Ernest Hemingway and others that they were a lost generation because of their experiences in the war. Hemingway later shared this in his book A Movable Feast, giving the term its literary prominence. This lost generation describes the disillusionment felt particularly by intellectuals and creatives after the war's death and destruction. Many people felt really disappointed after World War I. The war was so bad that it made them lose faith in the usual ideas and values. Loss of faith in traditional values led to a sense of being hedonistic, rebellious, and aimless. Because they lost faith, many of these people started living for pleasure, rebelling against old rules, and feeling like they didn't have a clear purpose. The term encompasses a broader group beyond writers, extending to all who reached adulthood during World War I. It's not just about writers, the term includes everyone who grew up during the war, acknowledging that they all went through a tough time together. This term lost generation, also known as the generation of 1914 in Europe. In Europe, they sometimes call this group the generation of 1914 to highlight the specific time when they grew up. The impact of World War I on the lost generation was profound and shaped their perspectives and creative expressions in significant ways. The first one is trauma and disillusionment. The experience of war left many from the lost generation deeply traumatized and disillusioned, influencing their outlook on life and the world. The second one is loss of faith in traditional values. Witnessing the horrors of war led to a loss of faith in traditional values and societal norms, creating a sense of cynicism and questioning. Cultural and artistic expression. The trauma and disillusionment found expression in the literature and art produced by the lost generation, influencing the themes and tone of their works. Search for meaning and identity. The war prompted a profound search for meaning and identity among the lost generation as they grappled with the sense of purposelessness in a post-world war. Rejection of conventional norms. Responding to the war's impact, many from the lost generation rejected conventional norms and adopted non-traditional lifestyles, reflecting their rebellious spirit. Influence on literary works. The themes of existential angst and futility of war and the search for authenticity permeate the literary works of lost generation, shaping the narrative of their generation. Impact on relationships and social dynamics. The war's aftermath influenced relationships, social dynamics, with many individuals struggling to connect and find stability in a world marked by uncertainty. Cultural legacy. The impact of World War I on the lost generation had a lasting cultural legacy, influencing not only literature but also broader discussions on societal values and the human experience. Contribution to modernist movement. The literary works of the lost generation played a crucial role in the broader modernist movement, challenging traditional forms and paving the way for new approaches to art and expression. Collective identity. The shared experience of the war forced a collective identity among the lost generation, defining their generation as one marked by the trauma and challenges of World War I. Now, the characteristics of the lost generation writers. Lost generation age, basically, it is the first one is disillusionment, defined by a deep sense of disappointment and loss of faith, particularly in traditional values and societal norms. Disillusionment is like feeling really let down and losing belief in things you once thought were true or good. As when you are deeply disappointed and start questioning the values and rules that everyone used to follow. Trauma of war, shaped by the experiences of World War One, with many individuals having witnessed the horrors and upheavals of the conflict. The trauma of war is when people go through really tough and scary times during a big war like World War One. They see and experience things are so awful it can stay with them and affect how they think and feel long after the war is over. Cynicism, marked by a skeptical and distrustful attitude towards established institutes, ideologies, and authorities. Cynicism is like having a strong doubt and distrust towards the big ideas and powerful people in society. It's when you are suspicious of what institutions, ideologies, and authorities say or do, and you don't easily believe that they are honest or good. Hedonism, response to the disillusionment characterized by a pursuit of pleasure and self indulgence as a way to cope with the harsh realities of life. Hedonism is like throwing yourself into a quest for enjoyment and self satisfaction when you are super disappointed with how things turned out. It's about chasing pleasure and indulging in things to cope with the tough parts of life. Rebellious spirit, a rejection of conventional norms and a tendency to challenge societal expectations, often manifesting in non-conformist lifestyles. A rebellious spirit is basically saying, I'm not following the UL rules. It's when people reject the normal ways of doing things and go against what society expects. They might live in a way that's different, maybe even a bit wild, just to stand out and challenge the usual ideas. Existential search for meaning. Imagine people diving deep into big questions like why are we here or what's the point of all this. That's the existential search for meaning. It happens when folks try to figure out the purpose of life in a world that seems kind of crazy and doesn't naturally make sense. Lit- Literary expression. When people turned to art and literature after the war, it was like they used these forms to talk about and show the feelings left behind by the war. They explored what it like emotionally, tried to find out who they really were, and looked for what was real and true. Aimlessness. I imagine feeling like you don't really know where you are going or what you are supposed to be doing. That's aimlessness. After the war, lots of people felt lost and sure in a world that didn't have clear rules or directions to follow. Embrace modernism. Think of embrace of modernism as a big hug to new experimental ways of doing things in art and culture. The lost generation writers really liked trying out fresh ideas and techniques in their writing. It was like they said, let's shake things up and do something different like this. The lost generation the lost generation's attitudes and expression didn't just fade away. They stuck around and made a lasting impression on how people thought, created, and expressed themselves. Their influence left a mark on the cultural, intellectual, and artistic scene not only in the 1920s but also continued to shape things in the years that followed. These are the prominent writers of the Lost Generation. The first one is Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, John Dos Passos, T.S. Eliot. Now we'll discuss about Ernest Hemingway. He was born on July 21, 1899. Hemingway's service as an ambulance driver in Italy during World War One exposed him to the harsh realities of conflict. The trauma and brutality of war became central themes in his writing, influencing his portrayal of characters with the aftermath of with the aftermath of battle. In 1920s Paris, Hemingway became part of a vibrant expatriate community of writers and artists. Gertrude Stein, a mentor figure, and other influential friends played a crucial role in shaping his literary style and worldview. Hemingway's writing style is characterized by simplicity, directness, and a focus on the iceberg theory. Much beneath the surface is left unspoken. Influenced by his background in journalism, his prose is economical yet powerful, creating a unique and impactful narrative style. Awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954 for his mastery of art of narrative. Awarded a Nobel in Literature in 1954, Hemingway was recognized for his mastery of narrative and his profound influence on modern storytelling. Ernest Hemingway tragically took his own life on July 2, 1961 in Ketchum, Idaho. One of his major work, The Sun Also Rises, it reflects the disillusionment and moral ambiguity of lost generation. The characters in the novel grapple with a pervasive sense of disillusionment stemming from the aftermath of World War One. Their experiences reflect the broader disillusionment felt by the lost generation who face the stark contrast between pre-war ideals and the harsh realities of the post-war world. Aimlessness and existential crisis of post World War One. The aimless pursuit and relationships of characters in The Sun Also Rises mirror the sense of purposelessness experienced by the lost generation. The characters wander through life, reflecting a generation trying to make sense of their existence in a world that seemed to lack clear direction or meaning. Emphasizes the challenges of finding purpose in a world profoundly altered by war. The novel emphasizes the difficulty of finding purpose in a world profoundly altered by war. This theme resonates with the lost generation's struggle to reconcile their experiences in a world that had undergone profound and often disheartening transformations. And the next famous work from the lost generation era is A Farewell to Arms, which was published in 1929. It explores the impact of World War One on the human spirit and relationships. The novel delves into deep impact of World War One on the characters' psyches, mirroring the psychological wounds experienced by the lost generation. The war left an indelible mark on individuals, shaping their perspectives and challenging their beliefs. Mirrors the sense of loss and despair characteristic of the lost generation. The pervasive theme of loss in A Farewell to Arms aligns with the broader sentiment of loss and despair felt by the lost generation. The characters grapple with personal losses, echoing the collective disillusionment of a generation that had witnessed and devastation of war. It examines the difficulty of forging meaningful connections in a post-war disillusioned society. The challenges faced by the characters in forming meaningful connections amid the post-war disillusionment parallel the struggles of lost generation. The novel explores how the war's aftermath complicated relationships, reflecting the broader societal shifts and interpersonal challenges experienced by the generation. So now this is all for the lost generation writer Ernest Hemingway. Thank you.